And welcome everybody to Hands-On Apologetics. You have entered into Virgin Most Powerful Apologetics Dojo. And welcome back everybody, Hands-On Apologetics. We are going to talk about pro-life issues, especially how to explain, defend the faith, how to persuade people about the pro-life message. And to help us do that, I can think of no better person than Master Apologist Trent Horn. Trent Horn is a convert to the Catholic faith. Trent earned a master's degree in theology from the Franciscan University of Steubenville and a master's degree in philosophy at Holy Apostles College, and he's pursuing a master's degree in bioethics at the University of Mary. He's a staff apologist at Catholic Answers. He's also an adjunct professor of apologetics at Holy Apostles College, and he also wrote several awesome books, such as Answering Atheism, The Case for Catholicism, Why We're Catholic, and his latest book is Counterfeit Christ, Finding the Real Jesus Among the Imposters. And Trent Horn, welcome to Hands-On Apologetics.
Thank you for having me, Gary. It's good to be here, and it's very appropriate to talk about pro-life because Todd, our editor, just dropped on my desk a Polish version of my book, Persuasive Pro-Life. So it's wonderful to see that here. A lot of my books have been translated overseas, and it's helpful for the places where abortion actually is illegal and people are trying to campaign to have it become legal.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's fantastic. Congratulations. Talk about being influential beyond the borders. That's great.
Yeah, I don't know how to pronounce it. It's Persuasive Pro-Life in English. It's, I'm going to butcher this, but Brezhkonyak do Zizka, Jak Romaszczak o Aborszki. So I'm sure your Polish listeners can tell me what I butchered. But
well, I'm part Polish, and yeah, it's tough. There's not very many vowels.
There's not a lot of vowels, and I think everyone likes to throw the Z's, the Y's, and the K's in there a lot, pretty liberally.
That's true.
That's true. Those are the Scrabble board, but it's great.
Awesome. Well, yeah. In fact, we'll definitely have to mention that book again at the end of the program. But I mean, as I mentioned in the intro, I don't know if a lot of people we're familiar with you from Catholic Answers, but before you got into the staff, you did a lot of pro-life work, didn't you?
I did. I traveled the country with a pro-life organization called Justice for All, and I did that shortly after college, and I would go to university campuses. We set up exhibits, photo exhibits of pictures of the unborn before and after abortion. And so I set those up, and we would dialogue with students, and I got a lot of practice doing that, and that's kind of really where I got my teeth cut on the art of dialogue and apologetics. I talked about abortion, but I also talked about atheism and Christianity with college students. So I did a lot of apologetic practice just right there on university campuses, really in the trenches, talking to people. So it's, the real deal here. A lot of people can study apologetics and you just read books and that's all you do. But until you get out there and you actually talk to people, you don't get a good feel for what it's really like.
Where do we start? What should we know? What basic objections will we encounter?
Well, when it comes to the issue of abortion, I find what's most important is not necessarily teaching pro-lifers how to answer every single objection, but rather to give them a framework to know where they need to go when the objections rise. And the most important thing a pro-life advocate can remember is this: they must always bring the conversation back to a single question. And that question is, what are the unborn? What are they? They're not human beings, abortion doesn't really matter. But if the unborn are human beings, then nothing can justify abortion any more than you could justify killing a toddler because they're, live in an impoverished or difficult situation. And so that's the key there, is to gently always get it back to that question, to force the other person to answer, what are the unborn and how are you treating them? And so I give people various tips and strategies for how to get the conversation there. I use a strategy called Trot Out a Toddler, which I can explain more a little bit later, that basically just gets us away from the reasons to justify abortion that have nothing to do with what the unborn are, like choice or privacy or overpopulation. Instead, gives us to focus on that main critical issue of what the unborn are, and then the conversation can be much more fruitful.
Yeah. So you don't actually, that helps a lot because you don't have to worry about, well, what if they appeal to overpopulation, or what if they appeal to something like that? At least you know you can guide them down a path that you're prepared to talk about.
That's right. And so it basically goes like this. If someone gives an argument for abortion that has nothing to do with what the unborn are, you could say, does this argument tell me what the unborn are? No, like overpopulation, it doesn't do that. There's a 4-step pattern I teach people. It's called Trotter to Toddler. It was named by my friend and mentor, Scott Klusendorf. And it basically has 4 steps: agree, apply, ask why, and ah. So you first just agree, yeah, the situation you raise has difficulties, whether it's the impoverished family or there's a lot of people in the world, there's overpopulation. But then you apply it. You just apply it to a 2-year-old and say, well, could we kill a 2-year-old because the world's overpopulated? Could we kill a 2-year-old because his parents are poor? And people will say, well, no, you can't do that. You say, well, why not? So agree, apply, ask why. Well, why can't you do that? Because a 2-year-old's a human being. You can't kill people. And the last step is okay. So that's the issue. It's not really about overpopulation because we agree you can't kill a born person for this reason. If the unborn are just as human as a 2-year-old, you can't treat them the same way. Now, this isn't the whole pro-life argument. It just gets us back to the one question, what are the unborn? Because people will say, well, they're not like 2-year-olds. Okay, good. That's what I want to talk about. I don't want to talk about overpopulation. I want to talk about what the unborn are. And that's the key to move the conversation.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, so there's a direction we need to take them into. And what's your experience doing that? Is it pretty easy to take them down that series of steps, or do people realize that you're leading them to a corner and they fight you on it?
Well, most people they'll say things like, on the radio, they'll say things like, okay, I see where you're going. And I'll say, well, where am I going? Because I want them to spell it out for me. Or they'll become repetitive. They'll go from overpopulation to the right to choose, to back alley abortion, to rape. And the process repeats itself over and over again, but just with different reasons applied to the killing of a 2-year-old, because they don't want to talk about what the unborn are. So it can be a bit frustrating, but you have to keep always guiding people back to the question that they don't want to answer.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, because like you said, it really does come down to that. You know, what is the value of human life, and you know, whether or not you could legitimately take the life of an innocent and helpless person, right? I mean, that's the ultimate goal.
Right, and then that's the key here, that if the unborn are just as innocent and helpless and deserving of basic rights as a toddler or as you or I, then we have a moral duty to protect them just as we would protect anybody else. And then the conversation moves on to when people say, well, they're not like 2-year-olds, they're not like you or I. That's true. That's true. The unborn are not like us. They are different. But the key here is to show that the difference between us and the unborn is morally irrelevant. There are differences, but the differences are as morally trivial as the differences between people's race, their skin color, sexual or sex, whatever it may be.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, because someone could say, well, physically, a toddler is different than an unborn baby. Unborn baby is, that's well, they probably wouldn't even say baby, but they would say, that's a product of
usually fetus or embryo.
Yeah, it's part of the female anatomy, and a toddler is self-sustaining and separate, and you're really comparing apples with oranges.
Well, and here, what I would say here is no, it's more like comparing, freshly budding oranges to fully bloomed oranges, or it's more like comparing a sapling to a tree, because you'll hear that one all the time. It's a classic one. An acorn's not an oak tree, and a fetus isn't a person. An egg isn't a chicken. The problem here is that an acorn, if it is fertilized, it is a very, very small oak. Otherwise, it's just a seed. But when an acorn is germinated, I should say, you have the beginnings of an oak tree right there. It's not an oak tree, but it's the very beginnings of it. You have a very immature oak. An egg that's not fertilized is not a chicken, no doubt about that. But I have tried a Philippine tree called balut, B-A-L-U-T, which is a fertilized duck egg. And I will tell you, my friend, that is an actual duck in there. Its crunchiness certainly gives it away. That is a very immature duck that's present. So a fertilized egg is a very small chicken. So the analogy that an acorn isn't an oak is not a fetus isn't a person. It's just an acorn, a germinated acorn or a fertilized chicken egg is not a chicken or an oak tree, in the same way that a fetus is not an adult. And that is completely true. That is true. They're all organisms in very immature stages of life, but they're still that kind of organism. So our goal is to show, one, the unborn is a human organism, not a part of the mother's body. It's alive, it's growing, it has human DNA, it's different from the mother's DNA, and it's a whole organism developing. That's science. Then after science,